My name is Jack Wheeler. I'm 34 years old and I just came home after serving 12 years in the U.S. Army. Most of that time stationed in Afghanistan. I was a captain, proud of what I did, proud of the men I served with, but nothing compares to the feeling of stepping back onto American soil and breathing in the air of home. Home is a small town in northern Texas, the kind of place where folks still wave at each other from across the road and everyone knows the make and year of your truck. I grew up on a cattle farm just outside town, raised by a father who believed in hard work, tight schedules, and saying little unless necessary. My mom passed away when I was 10. After that, it was just me, my dad, and my little brother Tyler. Tyler's 2 years younger. He never left this town. Never had to. He liked the land, the animals, the way things stayed the same. And my father, he liked that about him. Said it showed commitment, loyalty to family roots. He never understood why I walked away. But I didn't see it as walking away. I saw it as stepping up. I gave up my right to the family land the day I enlisted. I told my dad I didn't need the inheritance. I'd build my own life, and when I came back, I'd be someone worth respecting. I thought serving my country, fighting for something bigger than myself, would earn that recognition. I thought they'd be proud. Over there, in the heat and the sand and the silence after explosions, I thought of home every single day. I thought of the sound of the wind through the dry grass on our property, of the smell of rain on dirt roads and the crackle of the barn radio playing country tunes while we loaded hay. I held on to those things because they reminded me who I was before the uniform, and I believed, deep down, that when I came back, everything would be waiting for me just as I left it. That I'd come home not just as a son or a brother, but as a man who finally proved himself. I was wrong. Dinner that night was meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and too much silence. The air in the room felt heavy, like everyone had something they were holding back. I could hear the slow tick of the old wall clock behind me, louder than it had ever been. My father sat at the head of the table, posture straight, fork moving through his food like he was checking off a list. Tyler sat across from me, barely touching his plate, but grinning like he knew something I didn't. I had been back less than a week, still catching up on sleep and trying to reconnect with a place that once felt like home. Dad set his fork down, cleared his throat, and took a sip of sweet tea like it might soften the blow he was about to deliver. He looked up, eyes steady, and said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. He had decided it was time to pass the farm down, and Tyler would be the one taking it over. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My stomach turned cold. I blinked a few times, thinking I must have misheard. He kept talking, said Tyler had proven himself by staying, that he understood the land in a way I never could, because I'd been gone too long. Gone too long. That's what it came down to. Tyler leaned back in his chair, still smiling. He said something I'll never forget. You went to war. I stayed. Fair trade. Huh? My jaw tightened. I looked at him, trying to figure out if he even realized what he was saying, what it meant. My chest was burning, but I stayed quiet. I had to. Dad nodded along, acting like this was a logical decision, like he hadn't just stabbed a knife into everything I thought we shared. He didn't mention the years I spent away risking my life, or the fact that I gave up the land so I could serve. He didn't even look at me when he said it. I stared down at my plate, suddenly not hungry. My hands were fists under the table. I thought of all the times I imagined this homecoming. I thought there'd be a moment, a conversation where he'd say he was proud, where I'd feel like I belonged again. But instead, I was being erased from the story of the land I grew up on. Tyler picked up his glass, raised it just slightly like he was making a toast, said something about stepping up, about being ready. Dad smiled, real proud, like he'd been waiting for this. I couldn't even look at them. All I could think was how fast they'd moved on, how little I seemed to matter. There was no space for grief at that table, no room for anger either, only silence and that damn ticking clock. The moment stretched, and I felt something inside me crack. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like a fault line shifting. Dad finally glanced at me and said, "Thanks for everything, Jack." Like I was some hired hand they were letting go politely. I nodded once. That's all I could manage. I stood up, played untouched, and walked out the back door. The night air hit me like a wave, cool and empty. I stood there for a while, staring out over the fields. Fields I used to run through as a kid. Fields I thought I'd return to as a man who'd earned his place. But I saw it now. I was never meant to return to lead. I was just passing through. And Tyler. He hadn't just taken my seat at the table. He'd taken the legacy. And somehow, everyone in that house acted like it was how it should be. The room I grew up in was barely recognizable. My old posters were gone. The shelves cleared out. The bed dismantled and pushed up against the wall. Boxes of equipment and Tyler's spare tools had taken its place. It had become a storage room, somewhere to keep things no one wanted to throw away but didn't care to use either. That was the first sign. I stood in the doorway, hands in my pockets, staring at the place that used to be mine. The weight of it settled slowly, not all at once, like realizing you'd been erased. But the world kept going without even blinking. Dad didn't say much after the dinner, just handed over more and more of the day-to-day work to Tyler, until it was clear I wasn't part of the plan anymore. There were meetings I wasn't invited to, chores I wasn't trusted with, decisions made without me in the room. I had gone from sun to shadow in less than a week. When he finally told me I'd be in charge of the chicken coop, I didn't even react at first. I thought it was a joke. I waited for the punchline that never came. He said someone needed to handle it and that it was a good way to ease back into farm life. I nodded, like a man taking orders, but inside I felt a slow burn start to spread. The chicken coop was a mess. Dust everywhere, broken fence slats, half the feeders rusted. I spent hours out there alone, listening to the cluck and shuffle of birds who didn't know they were standing on top of my pride. I used to lead soldiers. Now I was collecting eggs and scraping droppings off plywood. Tyler walked by once, laughed, and said something about how the army must have taught me discipline. I didn't answer, didn't trust myself to. He had already started changing everything around the ranch, fired 3 of the old hands without warning, brought in some younger guys from town, all wearing fresh boots and loud opinions. The barns got repainted in some modern shade that didn't match the land. He rearranged the fencing layout, tore down the old water tower, said it was time to modernize. Dad watched it all, silent but nodding, like he was proud of the new energy. No one asked me what I thought. Some nights, I'd sit out on the back porch, the one place that still felt untouched. I'd watch the sun go down over the fields and try to remember what home used to feel like. But the porch creaked louder than I remembered, and even the wind felt different. Every morning, I'd walk past my name, still etched into the barn beam from when I was 13. And every morning, it felt like a ghost of someone I used to be. I was still here, but I wasn't part of it anymore. Not really. Not in any way that counted. I left the ranch before sunrise, no big announcement, no fight. Just packed a duffel and left a note on the kitchen table. It didn't feel like running away. It felt like release, like peeling off a version of myself I no longer recognized. I took the highway west, letting the morning light guide me out of that town and toward something I couldn't name yet. Amarillo welcomed me with dry air and wide skies. I stayed with Marcus, an old friend from my last unit. He'd been through his own battles, the kind that don't end when the war does. But he had a couch, and I had time, and for the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was waiting to be dismissed. We spent evenings talking on the porch, beers in hand, quiet between us. We talked about all the guys we lost, all the things we never got to finish. And one night, as we watched the dust settle behind a passing truck, it hit me. What if we built something for guys like us? Not a handout, not a charity. Something that gave us purpose again. That's how the idea started. A training camp, but not for soldiers. For veterans trying to find their place again. We'd combine it with a working farm, something grounded and honest. Grow our own food, build our own shelters, teach leadership, resilience, teamwork, All the things that kept us alive overseas, now reimagined for home soil. I pulled every skill I had from the military. Logistics, scheduling, resource allocation. I mapped out operations like I used to map patrols. I turned Marcus into my second in command. Together, we reached out to others, people we served with, therapists, agricultural mentors, folks who believed that starting over could be a mission worth serving. The first 6 months were brutal. We cleared land with borrowed tools and blistered hands, slept in tents while we built the bunkhouse, ate cheap groceries and relied on donations we didn't always get. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered what it felt like to be invisible in my own home. I wasn't building this for revenge. I was building it because I finally understood something. I didn't need them to see me anymore. I didn't need their permission to matter. That realization hit me one morning as I watched a group of vets plant their first crop. They were laughing, sweating, arguing over irrigation lines, but they looked alive, more alive than I'd felt in years. It wasn't about farming. It was about giving men a place where their scars didn't make them less. The name came easy, Valor Grove, a place rooted in strength and growth. We painted the sign ourselves and planted it at the gate. It wasn't much yet, but it was ours. Some nights I still think about the ranch. I wonder if they miss me, if they ever look at the empty chicken coop and remember the man they shoved aside. But that thought fades quicker now. Because every morning when I step outside and see the sun rising over this land, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is my battlefield now, but I'm not fighting anyone. I'm building something, and for the first time, it feels like enough. Things picked up faster than I expected. A reporter from a local news station came out to do a piece on Valor Grove. He spent a day with us, filming the guys working the land, eating together, sharing their stories. That segment went viral. Suddenly, we weren't just a farm. We were a movement. Donations started coming in, offers to partner, invitations to speak at conferences. I didn't plan for attention, but I welcomed it. We used every bit of support to grow slowly and intentionally. We expanded housing, added vocational programs, and brought in mental health professionals. It never felt like we were chasing fame. We were just solving a problem most people didn't want to talk about. And somehow, that honesty struck a chord. We stayed rooted in structure and trust. No shortcuts. No flash. Just work, and word spread. While that was happening, I started hearing rumors about back home. The family ranch wasn't doing well. Tyler had gotten himself into legal trouble, signed a water rights deal he didn't fully understand, and ended up violating state regulations. A neighboring farm sued, and the state stepped in. The financial strain started to show, equipment repossessed, livestock numbers dropping, employees quitting. Dad kept trying to hold things together, but his silence was telling. He didn't come out and say it, but I knew he was watching it all fall apart. Slowly, publicly, Tyler kept making changes no one asked for, tried to automate parts of the ranch that needed a human touch, ignored local suppliers and went with cheaper vendors. A few longtime clients pulled out. He blamed the drought, blamed the economy, never once looked inward. It wasn't a surprise, not to me. The way he led came from ego, not understanding. He wanted results without the work, legacy without sacrifice, and the ranch paid the price for it. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out either. It wasn't mine to fix. I had chosen my path. I had built something new, and that choice kept proving itself right, again and again. Valor Grove was thriving because it was built on service, not status. I didn't need to be the loudest in the room. I just had to show up day after day and do the job. That mindset spread. The guys who came through our gates carried that same quiet strength with them when they left. Some even started their own projects in other towns. That, to me, was success. Meanwhile, the old ranch was put up for sale. Quiet listing, no announcements. I heard about it through someone in town. I didn't feel anything when I found out. Not anger, not joy, just a kind of stillness, like the closing of a chapter that had already ended long ago. In the end, the land spoke louder than we ever could. It rewarded care and punished carelessness. Tyler learned that the hard way. I learned it by living it. I was in the workshop when I saw them step onto the property. My father walked slowly, like the weight of something he couldn't carry had finally broken him down. Tyler followed behind, no longer with that proud swagger, just a man dragging his past behind him. They didn't speak right away. They just stood there, looking around at the place I had built. My place. I wiped my hands on a towel and met them outside. Their eyes said everything. They were not here to argue, not here to defend what couldn't be defended. My father cleared his throat, but his voice barely held together. He said they needed help, said the ranch was failing, and that they didn't know where else to turn. Tyler didn't speak. He just stared at the ground, jaw tight, like he was waiting for the earth to swallow him. The silence stretched out between us. I let it. I wasn't in a hurry to make this easier for them. They had come to me, not because they understood what they had done, but because they had run out of options. I invited them into the office. We sat. No coffee, no pleasantries. Just 3 men and years of unfinished history hanging in the air. My father looked older than I remembered, smaller somehow. He tried to explain, said he had made mistakes, that he should have listened, that he missed having me around. I listened, calm, unshaken. I let him speak until the words dried up and the room felt hollow. Then I opened a drawer, pulled out a folder, and placed it on the table between us. Inside were the deed papers. I had bought the land. Months ago, quietly. Through the bank when the loan started to slip. They blinked, unsure what they were looking at. I watched it land. Watched the truth sink into their bones. The land they came to beg me to save was already mine. Had been for weeks. They just didn't know it. Tyler leaned back like someone had punched him. My father's hands trembled as he held the papers. He asked why I hadn't told them, why I didn't come sooner. I told him the truth, because I wasn't coming back to fix their mess. I had built something better, for people who earned my respect, who respected others. He said he was sorry, that he finally saw who I was, that it was clear now. I didn't answer that. I just looked at him, at Tyler, at everything that had brought us here. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been lived. He asked if there was still a chance, if maybe we could start again. I told him gently, no, that part of my life was over. Not out of anger, out of peace. I had made my choice, and it led me here, to something real, something that gave back. I stood and walked them out. The wind picked up as they left, and neither of them looked back. I didn't watch them drive off. I just turned toward the fields, toward the sound of work and laughter coming from the others. These were my people now. This was my legacy, and I was finally home. It was a quiet evening when he came to me. Just a kid, no more than 24, standing near the horse stalls like he wasn't sure he belonged. He had that look I'd seen too many times before, eyes full of things he couldn't put into words. He said he just wanted to say thank you, that the ranch saved his life. He told me he was close, real close, that before he found this place, he had written a letter and picked the tree. But then he came here, worked the land, sat in silence with the others, found peace in sweat and dirt and the sound of people who understood. He looked me in the eye and said he finally believed he was meant to keep going, that he had something left to give. I didn't say much back, just nodded. Sometimes words get in the way. I watched him walk off toward the main house, shoulders a little straighter than when he arrived. And right then, it hit me. All the years I spent trying to earn something from people who couldn't see me. All that time wanting a nod, a word, a seat at a table that never meant much in the first place. None of it mattered now. I had found what I was missing. Not applause, not land, not even forgiveness. Just purpose, real purpose, and people who felt seen because someone finally showed up for them. That was enough, more than enough. I walked to the edge of the property as the sun dipped low over the hills. The sky turned gold and soft pink, and the flag out front caught the wind just right. It flapped steady and proud. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, breathing in the evening air, letting the moment settle deep in my bones. I used to think coming home meant going back. Now I know better. Home is where you build, where you serve, where you heal. Veterans Ranch wasn't just a second chance. It was the life I was always meant to live. And as I watched that flag dance against the light of the setting sun, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't need recognition anymore. I had something better. I had peace,